Good morning. We are coming back to you with the quarterfinals of the KCBandit sealed tournament. A quick reminder, this is a sealed tournament with each player receiving 8 set 1 packs, 4 set 2 packs, and a little bit of free fixing thrown into the pools. So we see our number 1 seed, one step behind, who went 8-0 in the Swiss, a feat unrivaled in any previous ETS tournament, simply because we've never had an 8-round tournament before. Up against the number 8 seed, Garth Edu, who was 6-2 after the Swiss. One step behind is on a time Shadow Primal list. It's basically just splashing time. He's mostly like Feln aggro. And I don't believe I'm getting game sounds here. Let me fix that real quick. I'm sorry. Wrong menu. So we see the rabbit shot come out of one step behind. The nice thing about reckless units is sometimes you can't, opponents can't tell if you're bluff attacking or not. They just have to go, well, it has to attack, I have to block. And sometimes that happens. Although I don't believe Garth Edu is terribly sad that his Cumbre healer is going down. We don't have his hand cam, but his deck is a more controlling deck. He definitely has the better end game. So this is probably shaping up to be a good game for him. One step behind doesn't have 0 late game, but he definitely is more reliant on his early game of a pile of Gorgon Swiftblades, Ice Sprites, efficient removal, and execute to just force damage through. And now we see he has to make a really hard decision of if he wants to just throw away his Yeti Snow Chucker, a fairly reliable ping to the face to activate Spark, or if he wants to suffocate a unit that's going to come back somewhere in the range of 1 to 10 turns. He's tanking a little bit. He knows that this is a really poor use of Suffocate relative to the card's potential value. Yeah, he's just going to throw away the Snow Chucker, it looks like. Really, I can't blame him. The reliable Spark is nice, but the next Spark card he has in hand is the 6-drop. So he's not... Wow. Garth Edu doesn't take the block. Interesting. He's afraid of more tricks. And step behind, probably taking a quick glance at Garth's deck list. No, he's going for the post-combat Suffocate. That's an interesting decision. He's potentially reading that Garth has maybe a reason he wants to keep the Valkyrie Denouncer in play off that line. Yeah. He probably saw the Echo and realized that there was only one Echo card in Garth's list that he was worried about. Garth does not want his units to die. He realizes he has a much better counterclock. Swinging back for 7 compared to just the 3 that one step behind is able to put on the table. But he's getting a little bit punished for that no block now. The Magus can't quite as effectively swing in. It's kind of a 1-for-1 at that point because it's actually a 1.5-for-1 in favor of one step behind because the Magus dies giving up a dagger and can either shrink the Jotun or kill the Snow Chucker. I wonder which one he'll take. I think I would kill the Snow Chucker, yeah. For those not familiar, by the way, this card, Ice Knuckle Jotun, Spark, stun an enemy unit. It's a draft card of maybe a little bit of filler level, but one step behind now, clogged on time cards in hand. He's only running one natural time sigil in his deck, but he does have time fixing available to him. He just hasn't run into any of it yet. Yeah, the Felon banner is not the banner he wants to see. The Paladin Oathbook staring him down. One step behind is definitely under the gun to probably rip either a time sigil, I was going to say, or an ice sprite to stop the air assault. So if he plays the time sigil, he gets a fairly large copper conduit, but he's still under a 2-turn air clock. So if he plays the copper conduit out, it will be a 9/9. Interesting. Does Garth Edu have to stay back in the air? Certainly not now. That Terrazon can soak up enough overwhelm damage on the ground that the Argentport Instigator's text is not actually a downside. Does that change the math? Does one step behind just win here? Well, I guess we'll find out. At best, he can soak. Yes, as long as Garth Edu blocks well. He just wins in the air. Yep. And one step behind, does not have an air blocker, does not have a way to kill the Valkyrie Denouncer in the air. He should have taken the Static Bolt himself line, I believe. I think that was the optimal line here, but he doesn't agree. So we see one step behind going up, or sorry, Garth Edu going up 1-0, one step behind going down 0-1. This is a best of 5, so we are going back straight back into another game with main decks. We also have Hythar in the tournament. He is playing off against Covert Killer, a name from the Scions League, who hasn't really been playing in ETS tournaments recently, but he did have decent success in the Scions League at this point over a year ago. All right, one step behind, appears to be back in game. Now this is a hand much more to one step behind's liking. His hand in the previous game was a little slow. This hand gets him straight out of the gate and running. I believe he'll almost certainly keep this. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's guaranteed. He is all but guaranteed to get that Gorgon Fanatic out, given that he's on the play, or get it through rather, given that he's on the play here. Garth will need a 2-drop and a 3-drop, or at least something to play on both turns 2 and 3. Oh, and that actually just makes it even more likely that he'll be able to get through at some point. I wonder if he... Okay. I was going to say, I wonder if he just decides to hold up powerful Lightning Strike here, but he wants to get the Gorgon Fanatic through, and playing it out as early as possible gives it the highest chance to get through. So I can't disagree with his line, but just holding up Lightning Strike would have been an interesting alternative idea. Okay, I was going to say, he may just be willing to Ice Sprite the Instigator and swing with the Fanatic, forcing the Awakened Student to trade. Oh, a Runehammer out of Garth is brutal. Alright, one step behind at a very fast start. He was really only missing a 2-drop to be a perfect curve, but Garth has a very, very strong response. Awakened Student on 2 into Instigator on 3 into Runehammer on 4. He managed to influence out perfectly and stuff this very aggressive start. You know, of course, this is sealed. This is going to be, to be expected, a little bit slower of a format than draft, even. And a much slower format than constructed usually is. So one step behind, missing a 2-drop, you know, doesn't mean his curve was lacking in any way. He, you know, even an aggro deck is often not expected to curve out perfectly 1, 2, 3 in a format like this. Yeah, Garth is looking to be going up to a very quick 2-0 lead. One step behind has a really hard decision here. Yeah, he just lets the Lightning Strike find another target. I believe the Instigator is going to eat the Lightning Strike here. He may want to hold on to it to kill the Bone Picker next turn, but yeah, he decides to just kill the Instigator. All right, so one step behind is somewhat stabilized here, but Garth certainly has the advantage of more cards in hand. The Oathbook on board as well. Yeah, the Karmic Guardian is kind of putting the game away here. I don't believe one step behind is any good response. Oh, and now the Beckoning Lumen is going to be drawing Garth a card every turn. Yeah, I can't see a way out of this for one step behind. He's going to be going down to a quick 0-2. Sorry, I was slightly distracted there. There was an issue with another one of the games that I had to resolve shortly. You know, if this Champion of Mystery can somehow manage to get up to 6 time to draw cards, then maybe one step behind can come back. But this Karmic Guardian is going to start being able to block. And that's really if Garth decides to block. If he does, the Static Bolt will be able to finish off the Karmic Guardian, but now he doesn't even need to block with the Karmic Guardian. He can just block with the Blister Sting Wasp. And one step behind isn't anywhere near 6 Shadow Influence to have it be unblockable. Yeah, and I think one step behind is kind of realizing that he doesn't have any good swings here. Interesting. Well, it is very true that even in the quarterfinals of a tournament, if your only line is to hope your opponent makes a mistake, you have to take the line. The very small chance your opponent makes a mistake is better than no chance at all. But Garth did not make a mistake in those blocks. He's putting the game away, drawing cards, gaining life. He stabilized back up to over 20 health. Yeah. Unfortunately, one step behind, now down 0-2. We'll see how he decides to sideboard. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to watch any of the matches yesterday, so I didn't get to see how either of these players like to sideboard in any of their matches. And every single card in your pool is legal as a sideboard option. So both of these players potentially could board into a completely different set of colors. So we will have to see how that plays out. So both of these players have earned at least $15 for their performance so far. Win here gets them up to a $40 cash prize. Once again, this is all sponsored by KCBandit. He's a big fan of draft in this game. He approached us at this point a few months ago about running a sealed event. But we didn't have time to run it until after World. So One Step Behind looks to still be in the same color combination. Yeah, this definitely seems to be a keeper. A curve of, Seek Power into Found Stranger into Nightblade. And then hopefully the Nightblade not dying to aReNGee seems to be the route he's going to take here. Yeah, now he has fixing for every one of his colors. I imagine if he is not running double time cards, yeah, okay, he'll play the Diplo Seal for one of his Champion of Mystery colors, and so Shadow makes the most sense here because he's not likely to get 6 time. I think you might have to hit every single piece of time influence in his deck to get to 6 time, if he even can at all. I'd have to count the number of strangers. He may, if the board stays empty, actually decide to Life Drinker his opponent's face this turn. It kind of gets in the most possible damage out of the hand. But he values the surprise of it as a removal higher than hitting face with it. Garthy stumbling out of the blocks here. And this is the exact sort of hand that One Step Behind's deck wants to punish. And as a hand more often found in sealed than even in draft. It's very hard to reliably curve out in sealed. Both players managing to pull it off last game was certainly in favor of the player who wants to go late. But this is the more common board to see if you're the aggro deck in sealed. Your opponent may have played out a low value 2 or 3 drop that you can just swing past or, trade up with. But more often than not, you're just staring down an empty board and your opponent's kind of looking at their hand going, I want to play these expensive cards. Yeah. At this point, Garth is valuing the stun of the Joral's Frostkin more than the surprise value of the removal from Life Drinker. Unfortunately, that can't be stunned, nor can it be removed with the Life Drinker, the Awakened Sentinel. But One Step Behind can still grow his board effectively. He's now on a 4-turn clock of unblockable damage. Garth needs to find a removal, a silence. In his main deck, we obviously saw the aReNGee last game. aReNGee last game, sorry. But he also is packing a Rebuke. And it looks like... and a Death Strike as his other main deck answers. And of course, he may have boarded into other answers for this game. Interesting. One Step Behind taking the chump block there surprises me. The Awakened Sentinel is likely to be the card swinging more than the... Oh, okay. Of course. He wants to kill the Loyal Watchwing with the life drink. He's not even caring about his life total. He just wants to kill the other threat, of course. Sorry about that. All right, Garth is certainly able to put on a good counter clock here. The Copper Conduit can't swing, but this unblockable 4 damage per turn is going to be incredibly hard to race. Oh, the Levitate basically seals this one up. Oh, and the Static Bolt actually does seal this one up. Provided Garth isn't hiding and protect over there. Nope. All right. One step behind, manages to pull himself onto the scoreboard for this round. And sorry for the slightly distracted casting. Tried to look up the deck lists in the middle of the match. Less than ideal. That is the downside of this sort of format. Is player deck lists are very much more volatile than usual. And we'll see if either player wants to do some more sideboarding before they get into game number 4. All right, we have a result from the other side of or actually from this side of the bracket. The winner of One Step Behind versus Garth EDU will be going up against Jerry in the semifinals. Jerry beat Danibor 3-0. All right, and One Step Behind is back in game. I think One Step Behind. Interesting. Okay. I think he could have considered mulliganing that. It doesn't have a 2-drop, but it does have multiple spells he can cast on 2. He hasn't seen any of his Swift Blades on turn 2. I was actually having a post-tournament discussion yesterday with Manoon Mouse and Sir Rhino about how I think this might be the zenith of Swift Blade's power potential in any format that's been played for this game. Set 1 draft and set 1 and 2 draft. It's obviously a very powerful card, but I think, strangers can't block it. And so I think in this format, where I think a lot of people are going to be playing strangers as their 2-drop, Swiftblade will turn into just an unblockable 2/3 for 2. So Garth may want to hold back this Scavenging Vulture if he has another way to block the Gorgon Fanatic in hand, but he's missing Time Influence. But he obviously has something waiting in the wings here. We'll see what it is. Interesting. So One Step Behind pulls off the, getting a draw 3 out of his Gorgon Fanatic. He can now choose to fill the board with any number of options. I imagine he'll go with, the Snowcrush Yeti and Nightblade. Kind of repeating his plan from last game of having an unblockable clock, where even if Garth could otherwise stonewall him, he won't be able to race effectively. Garth not playing anything on 5 is also a bit suspicious. His deck does have a decent amount of high end, but I would suspect he's got something he wants to play, and we might find out what it is finally here. We don't. Wonder what fast spell he's holding on to. If it's a Death Strike, I would be slightly confused that he isn't pulling the trigger on this Nightblade just to protect his health total. We have another match result coming in. Isomorphic goes 3-1 against Zephyr. Isomorphic was actually the other 7-0 at the end of the Swiss yesterday. He lost to One Step Behind to go down to 7-1. All right, it is a Death Strike, and he decides to Death Strike. I don't know if I like the Death Strike on the Wind Shaper there. It does effectively result in taking 3 less damage per turn compared to 2 less from the Nightblade, but eventually, ideally, he stonewalls. 1 step behind units. Ah, okay. If that was his plan, he's going to, it was a good plan, but he will unfortunately run into this lightning strike. And now he's under the gun. He needs to draw really hot to pull this out. 1 step behind has a commanding lead so far. I wonder if he offers the trade for the Snow Crush Yeti or just, decides to stun it and get it out of the way. I think I would have considered offering the trade personally, but we have seen Awakened Sentinels out of Garth's deck. He may just, 1 step behind, may just want to get the guaranteed stun off. All right, and we see Covert Killer went 3-0 over Hythar, unfortunately, for Hythar. All right, this Blister Sting Wasp is putting in work. It may actually just be enough to stabilize here. But the Ice Bright Rip means that there is no way for Garth to block. And one of the things I was commenting on 1 step behind's deck is that this seems to be incredibly hard to block. All right, and so 1 step behind ties this up 2-2. All right, and we see 1 step behind is now into the last game of the series. Winner take all here. And by all, I mean an additional $25 with a chance to win even more. All right, 1 step behind's hand is a little slow. We see the strength of Umbran Reaper here, but he doesn't have a way to cast the Copper Conduit. Yeah, so he decides to mull that hand. That makes a lot of sense. And now he gets a very powerful hand. In terms of he'll be able to cast every card in his deck. It's a little faster. It's not very fast. But he will be able to Amethyst Acolyte down any small creatures out of Garth's hand. And Garth appears to potentially be a little influence screwed. He's base Combre, and he... All right, and he is going to get not really punished, but he will lose that Direfang Spider for free. But Garthidi was kind of base Combre. He's 3 faction, but Shadow is his, generally speaking, lightest color. Glancing at the decks. So 1 step behind could try to just efficiently use his power, develop the Soul Collector. Nope. All right, he decides to just play out a card that can trade with the Instigator. Probably will want to try to race if offered, but Garth is... Ah. Okay. Well, so Garth doesn't want to swing with his Instigator because he doesn't want to race. 1 step behind is very likely to be able to race even the Oathbook because the Savage Stranger has a pseudo Oathbook effect. Both the Instigator and the Savage Stranger would be swinging for 1 more every turn. Yeah, and Garth knows that 1 step behind's deck is full of removal. So the Instigator, if it swings, if you were to be able to even play a replacement blocker, the replacement blocker may not be able to actually block. So one step behind is now able to swing for 8, assuming no tricks. He plays the Wind Shaper to increase that to swing for 9. He actually has a 2-turn lethal here because he'll be able to static bolt his opponent's face if there's no tricks. Okay. That Wind Shaper was huge. If you didn't play the Wind Shaper pre-combat, the Alkblast would have been able to kill the Ice Sprite. The Instigator would have been able to either eat the Amethyst Acolyte or just trade with the Savage Stranger. Now, one step behind, still has lethal on board, but a trick still being able to save Garth Edu. Alright. Yep. Now he'll be able to block the Instigator. He's down to 10, but he may be able to stabilize if he can draw time. Now, one step behind, of course, cannot activate this Bone Picker, but it's still a 3/3 body on the board. Oh, that's... Again, he'll be able to put down a lethal clock if he plays this Lethari Falchion. Or a lethal attack this turn, rather. Garth just stumbled a little bit too much, and one step behind was able to keep pressure going. He's really just debating, okay, what fast answers are in my opponent's deck? And this event is, I imagine, very hard to, to know what to play around, especially in the post-board games. I wonder how much research either of these players did on their opponent's potential sideboard options. And yeah, one step behind decides to go for it, winning the series 3-2. All right, we'll be going into the semifinals of Isomorphic versus Covert Killer in the next video. See you there.